Welcome, friends, to Amir Shakur Speaks with your host, Amir Shakur. That's me. Today, we're talking about a very difficult conversation that's been lingering on and lingering on and lingering on for years and years and years, and it's about police brutality in urban America. So, as we're addressing this issue, I mean, it's definitely something that is a problem, to say the least. So, with that being said, we're going to have a pretty interesting dialogue, a pretty interesting show. And again, it's really about just a ongoing issue, an issue that I've been able to really participate in, not even from a spectator standpoint, but actually being on the ground with a lot of the social justice movements and even being the victim of police brutality on multiple occasions. So, we'll talk about those things in essence. But I'd like to welcome you to Amir Shakur Speaks and Amir Shakur Speaks Broadcasting from the wonderful ABS Communications Studio in the beautiful South Side of Chicago. And our goal is to bring the best in urban information, faith, and politics and economics, all done from an inspirational perspective. So if you do me a favor, if you haven't done so, please like, follow, and subscribe because definitely we want to do our best in making sure that you get the information that you need. And it's not done from the point of someone who's not a novice, but me being who I am, former Huffington Post contributing journalist. I've also written for CNN Night Reports and quite a few other media outlets, to say the least. So, with that being said, tonight's show is sponsored by the Chicago Urban Daily. And the Chicago Urban Daily News is Chicago's newest news outlet, and looking forward to hearing a lot from that outlet. So if you haven't, go ahead and Google it. Social media is Googleable, and like the Chicago Urban Daily. As we're going into the show, remember your voice matters. So let's stand up and speak out, y'all. Let's stand up and speak out. We're gonna open up the show on a interesting note. But before we even get into that interesting note, police brutality in urban America is the topic. Again, if you want to join us and if you want to participate in the conversation, please feel free to go on to Amir Shakur Speaks broadcasting channel, and you can come on and join the conversation. And our VIPs are already in the chat room. Hello, Ramona. How are you this evening? Some of our other VIPs, hey, listen, we appreciate the VIPs and the people who are supporting this community. And listen, if you ever want to come on, or if you want to add your voice, which I know you always do, hey, feel free to do so. With that being said, tonight, we're going to open up on let me remove that one because we already talked about liking and subscribing. But all this month in February, you guys know what it is. It's Black History Month, and we want to give it its proper treatment. So tonight we're talking about a legendary American, and I had the opportunity to talk about him prior to now. I think we addressed them, but it's significant because we're talking about Minister Malcolm X, and we're saluting the visionaries of industry, social justice, politics, and science, all done from an inspirational perspective. So our remarkable person of this particular broadcast is the Malcolm X, or Malik Al-Shabazz. Many of you know him as Malcolm X before he converted using his spiritual name. Malcolm X's remarkable journey showcases how an individual from humble beginnings to societal adversity can transcend from limitations to achieve greatness, inspiring others to do the same. And what do we mean by that? Well, basically, he rose from the levels of a person who was someone who's considered a drag of society, a criminal, drug dealer. He went to jail for a lengthy period. Some of that was due to the racial prejudice of the age, but he definitely was and admitted during his lifetime to participating in criminal activities. He shed the confines of racial prejudice and disrespect later on in his life, evolving into a champion of human rights, in profound respect for all. First starting off as with the Nation of Islam, and then he ventured off into Orthodox Islam. In that respect, he evolved into a champion for human rights because he eventually saw that human rights involves everybody, all walks, all faiths, all beliefs. There's no jurisdiction or demographic destination for you to be a better person. And Malcolm began to teach that. And ultimately, towards the end of his life, he was assassinated on today's date, February 21st, 1969. But he leaves a lasting legacy, and that legacy from 60 years ago, that legacy is endured throughout time. So I will always consider myself a son of Shabazz. And Malcolm deserves all of the accolades that he gets. So let's go ahead with that being said. Malcolm X is our visionary leader of the day. All right. So now, with that being said, basically the new segment that I will be addressing is Ask Amir. So it's amazing that if you want to ask me a question about anything, I'll go ahead and broadcast it. You can send that to Amir Shakur Speaks at gmail.com, and let me post that Amir Shakur Speaks, and then we'll get to the question of the moment, and I'll address the question that was sent to me. All right. And again, and feel free to participate in this. Feel free to, I don't claim to have all of the answers, but I do have some of the answers. And remember, Amir Shakur Speaks at gmail.com. So thank y'all for being a part and sending this question in. So this question comes from Jonathan, right? So Jonathan said, let's get back to the question. What was the moment you realized because of your skin color, the rules are different from you? Okay, let me read that again. What was the moment you realized because of your skin color, the rules are different from you? And I'll post that as well. Let me post that. I want to post that. What was the moment you realized because of your skin color, the rules are different for you? Well, you know what? I'd say that children in urban communities often receive explicit instructions, and those instructions are: listen, you got to do certain things by society, right? Walk this way, talk this way. There is a conversation about being aware of the police, and these are the things that are told, things that are forbidden, such as wearing hoodies or running through certain neighborhoods to avoid being perceived as a threat. This is real, all right? So my situation that happened, to answer your question, Jonathan, was me and my brother went into a local police station. I was 4 years old. He had to be around 9, my late brother. And we went to buy a candy bar from the candy bar dispenser. And a detective, I call him Boss Hog because, I mean, if you could imagine what Boss Hog looked like, this detective looked just like Boss Hog. And he came out and he told us to get the hell out of the station. And, didn't really realize at that point, I was 4 years old, what it was, why he told us to do that. I can't even remember. He might have even, had some handcuffs or maybe even a gun. I just don't remember. But I know that he was an imposing figure, a big old white hat on. And I mean, Boss Hog, except that he wasn't the short one. This was the big one. So there it is. That was the first time that I had experienced police brutality, and it was the moment that I realized because of my skin color, the rules are different. And this is not this is my subjective opinion. Some of you may agree to disagree, but there it is. All right. So Jonathan, thank you for that question. Again, if you guys have a Ask Amir question, if you guys have an Ask Amir concern, if you got anything you want to talk about, you want to talk about your love life, I'll try to address that. I can't say that mine is any better than yours, but we could address it. Let me scratch my head behind that one. Amir Shakur Speaks at gmail.com, y'all. All right. And I thank you again. If you guys want to join the topic of our conversation, which is police brutality in America, please feel free to come on. And yes, you're all welcome to be a part of the conversation. All right. So with that being said, let's get into it. So as we are talking about, as we're talking about the police brutality conversation, it just seems like for many of us in America, especially urban America, according to recent statistics of the last 12 months, police brutality, especially in urban communities, is still going on, with at least 12,000 people were killed by police in 2025. 12,000 killed by police. Early data for 2026 indicates that as of February, approximately 27 people have been killed by law enforcement. And, it's no surprise that there is a demographic that's being affected by the police brutality issue. And listen, this is not a knock on the police, right? This is not a knock on policing in America. We definitely need police. We need police to be right, though. We need police. We need law enforcement, whoever it is. If it's the federal guys, which the ICE or Border Patrol, if it's TSA, I mean, if it's anyone at that level, all the way down to community policing, we need police to be right, So when it comes to February of 2026, I mean, the members of the police force in America, it's not a good job. We've seen it. We've seen the Amir Rices of the world. We've seen the George Floyd protests of the world, and it doesn't look good, guys. We got to be able to do better when it comes to civil rights and civil rights trends, and how we can embrace what's going on in America with everyone. So we want to talk a little bit about recent cases that are going on. And I think I'm going to start with just to highlight the emphasis of the need for better policing in urban America. And when I say urban America, that means in the neighborhoods that are primarily affected by minorities and people of color. I don't think we see a lot of these incidents happening in the wealthier suburbs and downtown areas. And some people can say, well, it's because those people mind their business, do what they're supposed to. Well, that's a very one-sided narrative. A lot of times when these incidents happen, and I know this for a fact, it's been because, there's some officers who didn't do what they were supposed to do. So let's talk a little bit about it. And me being who I am, I'm a criminal justice specialist, and I've worked in a lot of these cases. Starting off with Trayvon Martin. And Trayvon was a little bit different. He was murdered by a security guard, wannabe police officer. But with that being said, I just want to share, just to highlight a little bit of the emphasis on where we're at. And I think that we'll start off with a case out of Jacksonville, Florida. Now, this case in Jacksonville, a Jacksonville officer was suspended after a viral traffic stop footage showed him smashing a driver's window and punching him after the driver refused to exit. So I want you guys to look at this and you guys be the judge. And if you're just joining, this is about policing in urban America. And when will it change is the topic of conversation. So feel free to join in, and let's go ahead and give me a second and we'll pull up the incident, and then we'll go ahead and break it down. So it's the Jacksonville police brutality case.
Viral video we've been talking about throughout the morning here on Good Morning Jacksonville, stemming from a traffic stop in Duval. We have just received a copy of the official police report back from February of this year. Our crime and safety expert, Ken Jefferson, will break that down momentarily. But first, we want to bring you back up to speed on how this all started. As far as we know, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office announced Sunday that they have launched an internal investigation after a video showed an officer shattered a car window and hit the driver in the head multiple times. The video begins with the driver explaining to a Jacksonville Sheriff's officer you cannot see on camera that he was pulled over for not having his headlights on. The driver argued the lights did not need to be on because it wasn't raining. When he asks for a supervisor, things quickly escalate. Take a look.
Can you call your supervisor?
All right, go for it.
Exit the vehicle now. Exit the vehicle. Show me your hands.
Here.
I'm here. What is your reason, sir? What is your reason?
Step out now.
All right.
No.
We mentioned the driver was hit multiple times. We see once they're in the vehicle and again when he's taken out of the vehicle. The driver is identified as a 22-year-old. His name is William McNeil Jr. He's now represented by civil rights attorneys Ben Crump and Harry Daniels. Sheriff T.K. Waters says the department is committed to a full review of the incident and holding officers to the highest standards. We want to bring in now Jasmine Rose. She's standing by with our crime and safety expert, Ken Jefferson, with what we know so far about this incident.
Yes, and we actually just received this police report, and there's a lot of information that we're learning new this morning. So make sure you just stick with us as we're combing through all of this information. So again, we have Ken Jefferson joining us here with us this morning. He's our crime and safety expert. And Ken, what have you noticed inside of this police report that stood out to you the most? It was that night.
Yeah. A couple of things. The officer's reasoning for probable cause to stop him said that it was inclement weather and he was driving without headlights on. So as we look at the video, it appears to be sunny. It's not raining. Does not appear to be foggy or anything at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is when the stop was. Also, he said that he noticed the driver driving without headlights and no seatbelt on. Unless he put the seatbelt on after the stop, it clearly shows that he had a seatbelt on, that they had to take it off of him to extract him out of the vehicle. So those are questions that's going to have to be answered by the officer themselves. When we look at the body cam and the officer is approaching the vehicle, does he have a seatbelt on? But he did not articulate in the report that he placed the seatbelt on after the stop. He just said he saw him driving without the seatbelt on. That stood out to me. And then he also said that there was a large knife that he was reaching for that was on the floorboard under the driver's seat. According to what I see in this video, I don't see any kind of reach going on at all. Maybe I missed it, or maybe it wasn't there. We'll find out.
Also, in this police report, it states the injuries, that there were no injuries in this report. And we clearly see that his mouth was bloody due to a chipped tooth too as well. So these are some of the things that stand out. What happens when an officer writes down something that doesn't actually occur during a traffic stop, or anything that happens that doesn't seem to appear to be true?
Well, they're held accountable for the report, because the report is a sworn affidavit, basically. And what he articulates in that report is an official police report.
So here's the thing about the Jacksonville incident. With that Jacksonville incident, I think it's very important to notate that the Jacksonville officer was suspended after the viral traffic stop footage showing him smashing a driver's window and punching the 21-year-old young man in the face after the driver refused to exit. So it looks like the legal rambling of it, the legal part of it, is still ongoing. I'm not sure if there was a settlement or anything like that. Might possibly could have been. It's just I don't have that information at this point, but it looks like the police internal affairs investigation did show that the officer was at fault. And remember, we see these trends a lot of times when it comes to policing in America, and again in urban communities. And this is the case to where, as we see disturbing police tactics, and these tactics are used to affect a stop. And we're talking about disturbing to the point of illegal, unethical tactics. So that's one thing. I will say that, first thing that we always want to do in any case is if you are stopped by an officer, or we have to train even our young folks, first thing is you want to comply. You don't want to give them a secondary reason to do anything. I always say comply, make sure you notate the incident, and if there's a level of recording that can be done in any kind of way, try to get it as much as possible, because documentation is everything. All right. So that was the Jacksonville incident. And guys, look, let me know what you think. If you're just joining us, we're talking about policing in urban America and what it is, even from the historical context. there's always disparities often traced back to, historical systems when it comes to the urban community. Poor communities, Black, Latino communities, and these disparities go all the way back to, Jim Crow enforcement, even the slave patrols in slavery times. Given the context of the current social and political discourse, there is a level of engagement, and there is a question that still remains. And there's a moral arc to what this is, right? There's a moral arc to this situation, and it hasn't ended. It hasn't ended. Good afternoon or good evening. Good evening to one of our VIPs. Hello, Beth. And for those who are just joining us, we're talking about policing in America, and we're talking about police brutality in urban America, which is, it's an ongoing question. And again, we remember these cases all too well. Eric Gardner, Tamir Rice, George Floyd. These are cases that have, shocked the national conscience. So I want to be able to talk a little bit about those and highlight them. And here's my thing, just to take a balanced approach, we are in need of effective policing. We are in need of great policing, but we don't need it to the extent of to whereas it's going to be unfair. It's going to be unbalanced, So, we're looking at the numbers, and the numbers speak for themselves. When it comes to the numbers, let me say those numbers. The statistics are deafening. Police violence is a leading cause of death for young Black men, with an estimated 1,000 Black men expected to be killed by police over their lifetime. And that's a deafening statistic. I'm gonna put that just for reference, just to kind of chomp that down, because I think it's something that we should. Police violence is a leading cause of death for young Black men, with an estimated 1 in 1,000 Black men expected to be killed by police over their lifetime. Very, very sad. And I want to know what your thoughts are. If you're just joining us for the first time, or if you're just joining us, remember, just like and subscribe, but join the conversation. Go on YouTube, go on the Amir Shakur Speaks broadcast channel, and feel free to, give your comment. Your voice matters. You can join the conversation if you want to even join in as we're speaking live. You're welcome to do that. So we were talking about statistics, right? And here's my thing. The reason why I say urban, is because it is an urban problem. It's a problem in urban America, but in that, we could also say Black and Latino. We can say, we can say things of that nature, and we'd be right. We wouldn't be wrong. We want to be able to address this for what it is and be able to speak truth to power, right? So statistics was the question. Between 2000 and 2019, the average of 27 Black women and girls were killed annually by police as collateral damage during pursuit of domestic related calls. And we remember those situations like Sonia Massey. That was a domestic related call, and it resulted in her life being lost. Let's put that statistic up, because I think that statistic is very important. And you guys, feel free to call me out on this research, because I think it's very solid. But, between 2000 and 2019, an average of 27 Black women and girls were killed annually by police as collateral damage during the pursuit of others in domestic related calls. Very, very sad numbers, y'all. Very sad numbers. So, as we're talking about, these situations and statistics, because we have to make it real, there are other affected communities that, and I think that it's relevant to say urban America, because the problem, especially with the situation with ICE, is impacting urban America. I do know that the African American community has been dealing with these issues long term for many years. And, the impact and accountability, the exposure to police violence, either directly or via viral videos, is linked to PTSD, depression, things that, in our community, there is a lack of accountability. Only 35 officers were definitely convicted of crimes following fatal on-duty shootings, and 4 were convicted of murder, right? I want to put that statistic up, and then I want to talk about cases. Let me put that statistic up. Thank you for that, saying that is solid research, and I appreciate you. And it's all about having the information, because we don't want to speak passionately. We want to speak reference. We want to speak reference to what it is, okay? So let's do this. Let's do this. So I want to pull this statistic up as well, because I think it's so 35 officers as of within the last 12 months were convicted of a crime following a fatal on-duty related shooting. And a lot of times those fatal on-duty related shootings do not get to make the news. They don't get to make even incident reports because they're hidden. So let's talk about that as well. There was a case that I want to highlight that, and this was a Chicago case. And the Chicago case was a recent case that's ongoing as we speak. And let me show the video as well, to where it's in February 2026, which is this week. Members of a controversial tactical team in the 18th district were stripped of their police powers following over 100 misconduct complaints and, multiple lengthy federal lawsuits, right? So, that is something that, is unacceptable. And really what it was these were traffic stops in the 18th district, which is, I believe, the south side of Chicago. So this tactical unit was an indication unit, meaning that these were the folks who pull over drug folks, right? I believe I'm pronouncing it right. They look for drugs, and they'll do things to affect. If they see it, then there's a level of investigation, field investigation, that happens through their policies and procedures, right? But what happened was these folks were just literally arbitrarily pulling over. They were doing DWBs. Y'all know what DWBs are, right? Driving while black. And they were pulling over just citizens and basically putting cases to these, there was no cases, and they were literally making cases and basically cushioning their stats, sad but true. And this is an ongoing investigation out of Chicago. And keep in mind, Chicago is, we've seen our cases of police brutality. We've had Laquan McDonald. We've had other cases. So let's talk a little bit about that particular case, because I think it's very interesting. And again, it's a recent development. So I want to be able to share a little bit about that. And bear with me, guys, while we pull it up.
Chicago police disproportionately used force against Black Chicagoans between 2020 and 2023. That's according to a first-of-its-kind study looking at 4 years of data. Our Heather Sharon joins us now with more. Heather, we have seen studies like this before, including from the city's Inspector General. Why is this one different?
Well, this study, authored by independent experts who are professors at the University of Texas at San Antonio and the University of Pennsylvania, is the first to use scientifically valid statistical tools to assess whether Chicago Police Department officers are more likely to use force against Black Chicagoans Chicagoans, Latino Chicagoans, or white Chicagoans. They did that by comparing the race of arrestees and people suspected of crime against those identified in use of force reports.
All right, so what they find?
Well, they found that in 73% of use of force incidents, the person subjected to that force was Black. In 16% of incidents, that person was Latino. In just 7% of use of force incidents, that person was white. Now, the issue is that if you're a Black person suspected of a crime, you face a higher risk, nearly 39%, of being subjected to a use of force incident. If you are arrested, that risk increases to nearly 60%.
Wow. How has CPD responded to these findings?
Well, they sent me a statement that said, quote, "We know we have more work to do, and we will continue to build on the foundation we have set." CPD has said they've made significant progress in complying with the consent decree. Of course, that's the federal court order that requires them to stop routinely violating the civil rights of Black and Latino Chicagoans. That court order is about to mark its 7th anniversary.
7th anniversary. Okay. You also spoke with members of the coalition who've been working for more than a decade to change the way CPD operates. What do they make of this study?
Well, they're deeply frustrated that this disparity exists, and they're deeply frustrated that nothing has been done since the study was completed and published in March of 2025. That's nearly a year ago. And they say that it's simply unacceptable for this to be the state of affairs in Chicago, especially considering that we know the number of use of force incidents increased in 2024 and during the first half of 2025.
Okay. Heather Sharon, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
So there it is, y'all. There is the story, and this is a breaking story in Chicago, again, where these tactical teams were literally pulling folks over. And we used to call it the Red Squads, and we thought that the Red Squads were nil and void. And I've been a victim of that as well. With the Red Squads. And basically, these were investigative units that would make a habit of no holds barred stopping citizens. And a lot of times they were violating policies and procedures, their civil and constitutional rights, in making their cases. They were padding their cases with unethical stops, So, again, this is the 18th district where this controversial technical team were stripped of their police powers following 100 complaints. I'm gonna put that in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and address it. Hold on one second while we put that in there. So I just want to highlight what it is. Controversial tactical team in the 8th district were stripped of their police powers. So that was the video that we saw following these federal complaints. And for us, it's definitely an issue, because you don't see these things in South side of Chicago. You don't, the north side of Chicago. You don't see them downtown. You don't see them in the primarily wealthier areas, but you definitely see them in you see them in the urban, the poor communities, the minority communities. You see these things, and again, we all remember the cases of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and the list goes on and on. So if you're just joining us, we're having a conversation about policing in urban America, and I just want to get your input. So if you want to come on, if you will, feel free to come on the chat and give us your input. And the 18th district is where that tactical team investigation is going on. I lived on the west side from 1990 to 1999. One on the street was that there were white male policemen in our neighborhood known for beating up Black men on traffic stops. No doubt. Again, when we're seeing these statistics, and this is why, we're showing these statistics. And I just want to say that, as of February 2026, the situation is not getting any better. police brutality against blacks and minorities in the United States remains a pervasive issue characterized by significant racial disparities. And the use of both lethal and non-lethal force is so obvious in the black community that we can't ignore it, and we have, in essence, we have a conversation with the young folks and say, hey, this is what you do if you get pulled over. This is what you don't do. This is a real conversation, And while black people, just the black population, and we're speaking about we are comprised of approximately probably 13 to 14% of the U.S. population. We consistently account for 24 to 27 of fatal police brutality shootings, and those statistics are not just me; these are known statistics. That last statistic was a report by Amnesty International, and I like to speak from the standpoint of statistics because you guys, there are folks who would argue us down about those statistics, but I just want to, I think it's a healthy way to go, and let's pull up that last statistic, And again, if you're just joining us, tonight is the conversation about police brutality in urban America and what it is. So, we'll go back and we'll address it. While black people comprise about 13 to 14% of the U.S. population, they consistently account for about 24 to 27% of fatal police shootings. So a quarter of the police shootings, as of this Amnesty International report, says that, it's happening in the black communities, and that's tragic, right? What do you guys think? What is your statement about it? How do you feel about that? I think it's very real. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And, I don't think under this presidential administration, things are going to change. But I think under the next, it will change. But at state level, there should be accountability. Some of these states, Illinois, some of these states in California, some states like California, Illinois, New York, there's no reason that these disparities should not be being addressed. And there are levels of accountability that are happening in these communities. And we just have to continue focusing on what it is. And yes, I do believe that police need better training. And I think that's the obvious part of it. But there's also a level of punitilization, research indicates that, again, folks in the urban community are 10 to 25 more likely than white or wealthier folks from the affluent communities or the wealthier communities to experience non-lethal force, such as being handcuffed, shoved, punched, even when not resisting, right? And these are the things that are really serious. And in the last case that I want to talk about, I'm going to hold that. Because I think we're getting to that point. But this case is a tragic case that happened in Grand Rapids, right? And the Grand Rapids case is something that's ongoing, and I'm gonna find this case. I'm gonna find the video, and this video was a young man that was murdered by the police and shot in the head. It's a graphic video, so please watch this video out of Grand Rapids. And I just want to urge caution and parental caution if you have children, that this case is very tragic and sad. Let me just pull it up, and this video is this is an ongoing incident, and the video was actually released as of this week. So Grand Rapids. Bear with me 1 second while I pull that up, and we'll have that video for you. All right.
Get on the ground! Hands up! Look, hey, show me your hand!
tragic incident. I am thankful that the officers were not hurt, but I know that there's a family that's hurt. That's gonna miss this young man.
This is the last black child that died unjustly. I want justice for Daquan Trey Johnson. Okay? And I'm gonna get justice.
Tonight, family and friends of a man killed by Grand Rapids police are calling for justice. I'm Amber Kriska.
And I'm Brian Sterling. Family identified the man killed as Daquan Johnson. He died early this morning at the hospital. And tonight, we'll walk you through the video released by police, and we're sharing a reaction from the Johnson family. Johnson was shot by police at about 9:30 last night in the parking lot of an apartment near Eastern Avenue and Logan Street in Grand Rapids. GRPD says officers believe Johnson had a gun, and when they tried to make contact, he fled.
The department released 3 videos this afternoon, 2 body cam videos, a dash cam. The dash cam shows Johnson riding his bike down nearby streets and ditching it in the parking lot of the apartment complex. He slips, and that's when officers approach with guns drawn. A canine can also be seen biting Johnson while on the ground. Seconds later, at least 3 shots were fired.
Body cam video shows the moments the officer gets out of his cruiser. As the canine jumps on Johnson, one of the officers says to get on the ground and to put his hands up. With a gun pointed at Johnson's head, officers said Johnson was reaching for a gun and had one in his right hand. Officers repeated a few more commands before opening fire. A minute later, you can hear one of the officers talking about the gun.
Can you hear me? Move your arm! Yes, I saw the barrel pointed straight in my face.
All 3 of those videos came from a press conference held this afternoon. Chief Winstrom said the officers involved have been with the department for at least 5 years.
Winstrom also described the moment in which Johnson was allegedly reaching for that gun.
I believe both videos you can see that when he slips on ice after getting off his bike, he takes his right hand and he puts it in a way that would be awkward if you weren't taking something from your, either a gun or something else. So he was reaching for something. You hear the back and forth with the officers. The one officer's yelling, "Show me your hands, show me your hands." It's the other one that says, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun." He then says, "He's got his hand on a gun." He says, "Yes."
Hours after police released the videos, friends and family of Johnson marched to where the shooting happened. That's where a vigil was held.
Afterwards, they hosted their own press conference. News 8's Nicole Tam was there and shares their perspective. Nicole.
Brian and Amber, local Black community leaders are rallying behind the Johnson family. They had a 12-second video that captured of the altercation that's between police and Daquan. But because of our corporate policy, we're not able to show you that footage without signed permission from the person who filmed it.
Dozens of people packed the small Boston Square Neighborhood Association office.
What you folks see on this video is Daquan on his stomach. Both his hands are behind his back.
The video played 3 times. Reaction each time. The clip is from a wider angle that shows both Johnson and police.
They executed my baby.
From that perspective, the family believes what police said happened is not true.
What they released to y'all was a bunch of BS. They wanted to tell you my son was this bad person. He was this, that. No. What we saw was that the GRPD are really the bad people.
GRPD Chief Eric Winstrom said the officers had tasers, but the canine was the less lethal option.
In a similar situation, if I was an officer and had access to a canine, that would be my choice of less lethal option, because that would be used to capture this individual. And now they thought that the individual had a gun. It would not be appropriate to then approach with a taser unless you were certain that he didn't have a real gun or that it wasn't actually a gun.
I thought the justice system, the last resort was gun violence. But clearly, they missed the tasers, the batons, and every other device.
Because this was an officer-involved shooting, Michigan State Police have now taken over that investigation. We also asked police for comment on that video. We will let you know once we hear back.
So there you have it, folks. You know, we spent tonight looking at the numbers, and they're staggering. You know, when we talk about a system where a black man is nearly 3 times more likely to be killed by police than his wealthy or white neighbor or someone from the communities that are affluent. You know, we're not just talking about bad apples. We're talking about a systematic failure to live up to the very first line of our own founding document, the promise of to promote the general welfare, right? The constitutional document, you know, the promise to promote the general welfare. Copy this. Justice shouldn't be just a lottery based upon a zip code where you live. If you are in a lower level community or a poor community, or justice shouldn't be a lottery based upon your skin color. It requires a radical shift in how we define safety, moving away from just policing toward truly protecting through education, through housing, through healthcare. It shouldn't just be a moralistic failure is what it's looked at, or maybe I was scared, so I had every right to kill this person. You know, this citizen. If I'm a rogue police officer, or you know, we hear that as a clutch. You know, so what I am saying here, and what we're saying is here, we've seen the disparities, we've seen them time and time again, and there is a lack of accountability. Remember, between 2005 to 2019, only 35 officers were convicted of a crime following a fatal on-duty shooting, and only 4 were convicted of murder. Only 4 out of 3 dozen. And you know, those are the numbers that we know about. What are the ones that we don't know about, where they misrepresent themselves or cover up or write a different report? You know, modern policing in America has to change, and I'm going to say this again. There is a lack of accountability, and there is a danger when it comes to the way that folks in the urban community, in the black community, in the poor and Hispanic and Latino communities are handled, you know. So given the context of the current social and political discourse, here's what I have to say. You know, here's where I am morally with this. Here is the thing. The closing act of this story hasn't been written yet. History just doesn't happen to us. We make it. And I'm gonna leave you guys with one quote, but I definitely want to say that, you know, ongoing training is important, but it's just not the level of, it's not the fact of it. You know, ongoing training is one aspect of it, but you know, we're talking about when these folks commit ethical things, unethical things, illegal things, criminalistic things like murder, you know, and how do we do it? So again, the closing act of this story is not being written yet, you know, and we have how many more young children in the urban community, black children, Latino community, poor children have to die because of a rogue police officer. You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. So tomorrow, just don't be outraged, be active. Go to the front line, call a representative, support a local community bail fund. If you want to reach out to me, I can direct you. You can join my organization, Freedom First International, or the Freedom Foundation for Global Justice. There's other organizations that are doing great work. But democracy is a participatory event. Democracy is a reoccurrent event, and more than half of the people who are there are the quote is, and I like this quote, more than half the people are right more than half the time, but it only works if you show up to be a part of that half, right? You know, so as I'm signing off, I just want to say I want to thank you guys, you know, for being a part of the conversation. But it can't just be a conversation. This has to be a level of accountability. It has to be a level of action. there has to be a call to action, because in a time of defeat, simply telling the truth remains a revolutionary act. But if I am a Eric Gardner, the family, as a matter of fact, then I want folks to show up. I want that support. If I am of Trayvon Martin, then we need to come to the front lines, and we're calling that. If I'm attorney Ben Crump, we're going to, the question that he may ask is, when are we going to stop seeing these murders, these assassinations? When are we going to start seeing these unethical things, these criminalistic things that are happening by folks who are sworn to protect, right? So I am going to leave you with saying this. Amir Shakur speaks. Stay curious, stay loud, and above all, keep looking out for one another, right? Because it's about community, right? It's about what we can do to affect the plight of the whole, to serve and protect our communities. And I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the folks who have been watching. Please continue to watch. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at amirshakurspeaks@gmail.com, and I would address any question that you have. Remember about Ask Amir Anything. It's a very important piece, and I'm going to leave you with my card. Here it is, and at the bottom, amirshakurspeaks@gmail.com. There you go, y'all. And listen here, this is what I'm going to say to you. I'm going to say that again: democracy is a participatory event. We need to do it. We just can't. You can't be on the front lines and not be able to stand up and speak out and call others to do that. And those who are on the fence, I always say this, but I have to be very clear: get off the fence. You're not helping if you're on the fence, and don't ignore it, because eventually it's going to come for you. Amen. So listen, I appreciate y'all, and thank you for watching. Feel free to join my show tomorrow afternoon, and I'll have we're talking from an international perspective with Shatish Shakur, who's a international forensic specialist and an associate of mine. So we'll be talking about some things going on globally, right? Globally. So again, this has been Amir Shakur Speaks. I'm your host, and thank you again, and keep standing up and speaking out, y'all.